we finally got this rate cut, a 50 basis point. And here we are. We look at gold. It's up to basically its all-time high today. Silver's up back again above 31. But at the same time, it's outperforming, and gold continues to march higher at nearly a 10% compounding year-over-year return. So is it possible that we see 2,600, 2,700, 2,800, how about 3,000? You take the commercial bank suppression out of the markets and the price of gold and silver will be massively higher. And the worst part about a long-term macro cycle, which we have been in, is that most people aren't capable of processing the fact that this could actually happen here. That recency bias, that normalcy bias will be the worst thing for people to hang on to.
A recent 50 basis point rate cut has led to a surge in gold prices, pushing it near its all-time high, with silver also rising above $31. Gold has been compounding at an impressive near 10% year-over-year return. The possibility of gold reaching $2,600, $2,700, or even $3,000 is being speculated. If commercial bank suppression were removed, both gold and silver could see significantly higher prices. The renowned speaker, the president and CEO of Miles Franklin, Andy Schectman, exposes, we are at a point where there's no escape from both the depreciating currency and the massive growing debt burden. Andy believes inflation, acting as a hidden tax, is being preferred over raising taxes, while the stock market and national deficit are at record highs. Recent data shows India aggressively importing silver. Switching to gold and silver, India continues to import silver at a strategic pace, with 46 million ounces imported in August alone, draining exchanges. Andy highlights commercial banks that have been shorting silver appear to be changing course, covering their positions and adjusting their typical strategies. This causes growing risks of staying it short in the market. Moreover, commercial banks might soon abandon their coordinated efforts as they realize the market's strength and may shift to pushing it upward instead of suppressing it. This shift could mark a turning point where banks start to act individually rather than collectively. Additionally, Saudi Arabia secretly purchased 160 tons of gold from Switzerland, reflecting broader de-dollarization efforts by various governments over the past few years. We will present clips from Andy's interview, but before we do, if you want more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more updates. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
When I look around, I see that we are at a point right now, Dunnigan, where there is no escape from not only the constantly depreciating currency, but also from this massive debt, that burden that we have that continues to grow. And I think they figured that, well, this inflation, which is a hidden tax, is a lot easier than continuing to raise taxes. And this is done at a time when, our stocks are up around all-time highs. Our deficit is at all-time highs. We've redlined the national debt. And then you get these fake numbers like the CPI and the jobs numbers. And it's very difficult for the average person to understand exactly what is happening. But when you talk about these fake numbers, like the job numbers we talked about last week, 1.3 million Americans lost their jobs, replaced by 635,000 people, most of which were in this country illegally, and part-time jobs at that. Switching gears just a little bit to gold and silver, just a couple things I want to talk about, and we can move on. We've talked a lot about over the last few years of India importing copious amounts of silver. And, their gold numbers are up very high also, but India looks at silver in a very strategic manner. They imported almost 46 million ounces of silver just in August. That's around today's numbers. That's worth about $1.3+ billion, over 45 million ounces of silver in the month of August. And you annualize that out, they are continuing on a pace that is literally draining all of the exchanges. And you wonder how long the 6 or 7 or 8 commercial banks who have been short are able to continue to play this game. It's interesting, and also in looking at the commitment of traders numbers that just came out, it's as if the commercial banks are pivoting and changing the way that they are doing things. They are covering their positions, and they covered quite a bit recently, just the other day. And I noticed in looking at where the silver came from, it didn't come from the managed money. In other words, the managed money are usually the ones that sell the silver to the commercial banks. In essence, it came from the producers this time, meaning the managed money wasn't selling, and the commercial banks pickpocketing them the way that they've been doing for a very, very long time. In this case, management said, no, we're not going to sell that silver to you. And it was purchased by the producers. This is telling me that we are getting very close to that moment where the commercial banks realize that being short, naked short, in a market where a country like India can import 45 million ounces of silver in a month is as stupid as a mud wall, and they're going to bail. And we can see, it seems as though, almost as though that's indeed what they are doing. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but when I look at silver today, up to 31 and change, 31.20, I think it is one of these days that is exactly what is going to happen, is that they will let it run to the upside, realizing that the only way to manipulate a market done again over an extended period of time is to push it in the direction that it is going. And I think they are realizing this is a game that is crossed the line of being foolish and is now into, sink or swim. And I also think we will witness a period of time where all of these commercial banks start to eat their own. It will not be about a coordinated, collusive agreement the way we've seen these 8 banks short on your interview with Ed Steer and the chart that we talked about a few times now. It appears as though they've been doing this in a coordinated, corroborated fashion, and I think that will change. They will start to realize it's every man for himself. One last thing I want to talk about is gold. And, we talk a lot about Saudi Arabia. We talk a lot about gold importation by these countries, a lot of de-dollarization. And it just came out that the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority secretly, and that's the key here, secretly purchased 160 tons of gold from Switzerland. And that was discovered because of the import data that goes through Swiss customs data. Now, most of these governments, I would argue, have been secretly purchasing gold and silver and all sorts of other de-dollarization techniques.
During a recent interview with Dunnigan Kaiser, Andy shares the CPI is seen as a manipulated metric where the government selectively chooses items for the inflation basket. Andy shows an outstanding analysis for a 2% inflation rate, but as a lower rate could raise the standard of living. Countries are shifting away from holding wealth in dollars and accumulating commodities, signaling the end of dollar dominance. Wealthy individuals and nations are opting for assets over currency, as seen with Turkey, a NATO country applying to join BRICS while becoming one of the largest gold buyers. Andy briefly exposes that many in the U.S. are unaware of the economic shifts, and as countries discreetly distance themselves from the dollar, most people risk being caught off guard. The media's focus on divisiveness rather than this crucial economic shift makes the situation even more precarious. With countries like India and Saudi Arabia quietly accumulating assets and distancing from the West, a major economic change is looming. Those who don't act now could be victims of the impending shift. Let's dive into the interview.
If you look at the CPI, it's a rigged metric. It's a rigged metric where the government gets to cherry pick what items go into this basket that they're weighing, and it's completely and totally nonsensical. And all along, they're talking about reaching this arbitrary 2% inflation rate, which, again, I've never quite understood because, why not have it negative 2%, which lower the rate, the higher the standard of living. But they're 60% away from reaching their rate of 2%, and they're pivoting and moving the other direction and reigniting the inflation engine. And if you save in dollars, as Rick Rule says, you're gonna be a victim, period. And so that what these countries have chosen to do is to accumulate assets. It goes back to what Zoltan Pozsar was saying, and he's right. This is a system of who has the commodities will make the rules ultimately. So that is what we're seeing. And you look at a country like Saudi Arabia, who's trying to play both sides of the aisle, at least for now, and not upset the West to the degree that we really probably should be if we knew what their ultimate motivations were. You can see it if you're paying attention. But look, the fact that they got caught importing massive amounts of gold isn't the issue. The bigger issue to me is that there's a lot that they're not getting caught on. And these countries are realizing that holding money in dollars or wealth in dollars is a game that is coming to an end. And you can see that by them lowering the front end of the curve and the back end, the rates go higher just by a little bit. But that's the rest of the world saying, nah, we choose to hold assets differently than any duration debt instrument by a broken and insolvent country. So I think the same thing should be true for everyone, that you look at the wealthy people and they're not holding dollars, they're holding assets. And that's what we're seeing on a much larger scale here. Look at all the countries that are intending to join. Look at Turkey, look at Poland. These are countries that are massively accumulating assets, and yet they're Western-friendly countries. Look at a country like Turkey, who has applied to BRICS, the first NATO country to do so. They've been the largest buyer of gold for the last year, or right up there. So these countries understand the place that we are at. The problem here is that most people in this country don't, and they're going to get run over by this. And I don't know what you and I can do. We've tried our best to sound the alarm. Either you see this for what it is or you don't. And I don't think either administration is going to be able to right the ship economically, but can at least mitigate the path that we are heading down with this current administration. And you can see by the maneuvering of all of these countries and how they're trying to get rid of dollars quickly and accumulate assets and even do so very privately, just how relevant this really is. And the scariest part about it all, on top of everything, including the erosion in our First Amendment rights across the Western world, where you have to think twice about the things you say and how you say it and the way you say it, is that most people just don't have a clue what is coming down the pike at us. And I don't think it's ever been more concerning. And when you see a country like India and a country like Saudi Arabia, Western allies that are doing all they can to distance themselves politely and quietly and privately from the West, it should be a big eye-opening admission. And yet our media will not tell anyone what is happening. They're more concerned about fomenting this nonsense between the two candidates and this divisiveness that we're seeing, instead of uniting us into a common a common strategy. And that's why I do what I do, and I know that's why you do what you do. But I think we are going to get into a period of time here in the next few weeks where it becomes abundantly clear just how important this really is. It goes from hiding what you're doing to outright in your face and doing it. And if the current administration retains office and you see Kamala win and you get guys like John Paulson, massive, huge hedge fund guys say, I'm done, I'm pulling up, I'm selling $2.9 billion worth of assets, how fast does that change the narrative and what does that look like? So these are important times. And I think if, as Rick says, you're not a contrarian, you're damn well bound to be a victim. And it's becoming obvious that that is the path we're on.
The global shift towards de-dollarization and asset accumulation, particularly in gold and silver, signals a major economic transformation that many may not be prepared for. As countries like Saudi Arabia and India quietly move away from the dollar, those who fail to recognize the signs risk being left behind in an increasingly unstable financial landscape. How might the de-dollarization efforts of countries like Saudi Arabia and Turkey impact the U.S. economy in the near future? Let us know in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Until next time.